Guys, welcome to lesson 4. And again, we're just going to dig a little bit deeper. We're going to take a little bit different approach to solving today. We're going to focus on just solving for x no matter what. You're going to see on your homework assignment, like for instance on this one, you'll see like, I'll just write it down. You'll see something like that. And so it is just taken in consideration that when you do when tangent inverse is a part of that, you don't have to think about it. You're just going to, this is already taken care of for you. So don't worry about that. You can kind of just ignore it because they're protecting you from having to think about that for the majority of the lesson. So let's kind of back up here. So we have this, and I want to get x by itself. So just think algebra. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide by 4. So I have y over 4 equals tangent of 3x. And then I'm still trying to get x by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides by the tangent inverse. And I'm going to flip it because I don't like the x on the right-hand side. So I have 3x equals tangent inverse of y over 4. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And instead of keeping it like this, I'm going to multiply it by 1/3. It just looks a little bit nicer. Like that. And so this, my friends, is your final answer. So go ahead and do this one. I'll pause and we'll come back and see if we're in the same spot. Okay, so number 2 is really the same thing. If you'll notice, the process is the same. And I end up with 1/2 sine inverse of y over 3. And don't forget, arc sine is the same thing as sine inverse. So you're going to see that a lot in this lesson, like in the homework assignment. So don't, like arctan has tangent inverse. So whatever you feel comfortable with, just get comfortable with seeing both ways. So you can just grab the way you want and go with it. I prefer, like on this one, I prefer tangent inverse, so that's what I'll write in my notes. But I know that means that, so that's my hope for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on. So I'm going to divide by 2, and so I have sine inverse of x equals pi over 2. So this one is different because to get the x by itself, I'm going to take the sine of both sides. So hopefully you're kind of seeing something right now because the sine of pi over 2, think about that, pi over 2 is right there. So the sine is going to be 1, and so my answer is 1. Over here, like I said, I have 3 tangent inverse of x. So I'm going to divide by 3. And I'm going to take the tangent of both sides. So think radians. So, that's what we're dealing with, but our brains think in degrees. So pi over 3, that's 60 degrees. So if you're doing the hand trick, you can use the unit circle to look at it. A lot of times I use the hand trick. So 60 degrees is square root of 3. So the tangent of pi over 3, or the tangent of 60 degrees, is square root of 3. And that's my answer. Okay, so for number 5. So notice this one, I'm going to start here. So sine inverse of 1/2. So think about what angle, remember when we do sine inverse, gives me 1/2. So look at your unit circle and just stay in like the first quadrant because sine is 1 and 4, and that 4 would be negative. So that's why I like the first quadrant is fine. So 1/2 on your hand trick, that is 30 degrees, or pi over 6 in radians. So let me just kind of clean this up a little bit. I have cosine inverse x equals, and this whole thing right here is pi over 6. So now I'm going to continue on and take the cosine of both sides. So I have x equals the cosine of pi over 6? Well, don't forget pi over 6 again is 30, and so the cosine of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. Oops. And again, we're in quadrant 1, so we don't have to worry about signs or anything. Okay, go ahead and try number 6, and I'll go through it on my own, and we'll see if we're in the same spot. Okay, so the tricky part about this is that it's a reciprocal function. So I went ahead and changed it to sine to kind of wrap my mind around that. So if you'll just focus on this section right here, I figured out that my angle measurement was 30 degrees or pi over 6. So that's where I came up with that. So then I took the secant of both sides, and again, dealing with the reciprocal function is not in our comfort level. So I kind of thought about, okay, well, what would the cosine of 30 degrees or pi over 6 be equal to? And so on our hand trick, that's going to be square root of 3 over 2. So then this is secant would just be the reciprocal of that. Okay, we have 2 more that we're going to talk about. So the first one is this one. And again, I'm just going to rewrite this as that. I like that way a little bit better. And so I'm just going to use some algebra. So I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So cosine inverse of x, I don't know why I put that in parentheses, is 5 pi over 6. Okay, so I'm going to take the cosine of both sides. And I'm already thinking like, okay, I know that's some 30-degree reference angle in the unit circle. So if you have your unit circle handy, go ahead and check that. But you should see that's like 150 degrees. It's 30 degrees away from pi. So on my hand trick, or if you're using your unit circle, the cosine of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2, and that is in quadrant 2, so it's going to be negative. So x equals negative square root of 3 over 2. And again, we're kind of without the training wheels here, so like it doesn't give us any kind of restrictions on what we need to like look at as far as the 4 quadrants. So know that cosine is in quadrants 1 and quadrants 2. And so it's negative in quadrant 2. Okay, and for our last one, we're just gonna again do some algebra. So I'm gonna subtract 4 pi from both sides. And then I'm gonna divide by 4. Okay, so now I'm going to take the tangent of both sides, right? So I have x equals tangent of negative 3 pi over 4. Okay, well, tangent goes from quadrant 4 to quadrant 1 in here, from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. And let's have a look at this. So negative 3 pi over 4, that is like right there. And so that's in quadrant 3. So it doesn't match up with the restrictions on tangent. So this is going to be a no solution. And that's it.